Hi, what's up? Hello, my name is Liz, and you're watching For Booking Out Loud. So, once again, I have my beautiful tree, and then my all year, but only good once a month, 1 month a year, holiday decorations out. And this is part 2 of my 3-part November wrap-up because I'm crazy. Why not? And this is going to be my IndigAthon wrap-up from November. And if you're curious to see my beautiful nonfiction November wrap-up, check out my video from Tuesday, which I'll link probably right there. But if not, I'll also link it down below. All right, so let's get this thing started. IndigAthon was awesome. I read some incredibly interesting books that I don't think I would have picked up otherwise. And I found some amazing authors that I'm going to continue, of course. But let's look at the stats first. I read 9 books and watched 1 series for a total of 2,674 pages. Again, if I'm looking that way, that's because I took some notes, and I also have a beautiful journal. I have 2 places that I might be looking off screen for, and I apologize for that, but if you're gonna read 36 pages if you're gonna read 36 books in a month, I have to look at notes. I thank you for understanding. And this video, like my nonfiction November video, is going to be rated from the book that I liked the most to the book that I rated the lowest. Hopefully that made sense. So the book that I rated the highest, and that is actually going on to my favorites list for 2020, is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This book was absolutely phenomenal. It is the first book in a trilogy that Rebecca Roanhorse is writing, and it just came out this year, and it is pre-colonial fantasy, and I can't say enough about it. It is absolutely great. It focuses on 4 characters, or it has 4 point of views. You have Shapiro, who is a blind character who things have happened to him in his life, and he needs to get to the holy city of Tova in order to complete this ritual that his mom had started 10 years prior. And then you have Shyla, who is a Teak woman, and she is helping Shapiro to get to Tova. However, she does not want to, and she has powers of the sea. And then you have Napiro. I don't think I'm saying her name right, but she is the sun priest in Tova that is really in this political intrigue hole, and things are happening there. And then finally you have Oka, who is part of this Crow clan in the city of Tova, where all this political intrigue is going on. And it's a little confusing at first, and it took me a little bit to get in to understand. However, this book does not start simple. Like, you are going from page 1 all the way to the end of the book. It does not stop. Roanhorse does not let you breathe while you read this book. And it's kind of one of those where you start it and you're not going to put it down until you finish it. And basically I finished it and I'm like, where's the sequel? Why isn't it out yet? And when can I finish this trilogy? It was amazing. And I'm kind of mad that I have to wait now. That's basically what's happened. This was the new to me prompt, mainly because this was my first Rebecca Roanhorse prompt, or Rebecca Roanhorse book. And let me tell you, I will be looking at some of her other fantasy books. Now, point blank, pick this book up. If you like fantasy at all, pick this book up. Okay, my second highest rated book is A Mind Spread Out on the Ground by Alicia, Elliott. And I did talk about this in my nonfiction November wrap up earlier this week, but just as a brief summary, it is a series of essays that Elliott wrote in order to kind of work out how generations of Indigenous trauma affects the current generation. And she explores things like food insecurity, racism, what happens when the courts are against you, and abuse on different levels. It was just plain amazing, and she is a phenomenal writer, and it really pulls at your heartstrings. And it being a nonfiction, it's just different than a fictional book in different ways. How many times can I say different in one sentence? However, I really suggest this book, especially if you are a fan of nonfiction or you want to learn a different perspective on different topics. Just check this book out, honestly. It's a 4 out of 5 for me, hands down. Do it. Do it. Do it. Now, number 3 is How I Became a Ghost by Tim Tingle. And this book is a middle grade on the Trail of Tears. It follows Isaiah, who is a 10-year-old Choctaw boy who basically begins this huge journey with his family and starts to see ghosts because he knows he is going to die on this horrific journey going to an Indian reservation because his land was taken away. It is such a heart-wrenching story, especially considering it is a middle grade. However, I wouldn't have it any other way. It's such an important story to tell because Andrew Jackson, as an American president, forcibly took all these lands away, and thousands upon thousands of Native Americans died on this foot journey to foreign land. And something that really stood out to me is when Isaac's father told him not to look at his bloody footprints behind him in the snow, but rather to look forward. And it's just heart-wrenching. You never stop because you know he's going to die. And then you're trying to say, how can this be a good story in the end? And then Tingle somehow makes it into a good story, which is not to say it's a lighthearted middle grade fantasy, because it is a fantasy, but it's not lighthearted in any shape or form, but it's very informative. And it's an important read, and I think any public library should have it available for anyone, not just middle schoolers. Okay, my 4th highest rated book is Mongrels by Stephen Graham Jones. I read this with Amy from A Star Reads as our buddy read, and it's supposed to be a young adult horror urban fantasy, I think. It's a very interesting book. It's supposed to be this coming of age story, but at the same time, it doesn't have a linear timeline. It's not jumping back and forth to 2 timelines that are paralleling each other at all either. It's just almost a series of events. Not even series. It's almost these like instances in this young boy's life as he's growing up with his werewolf family. And Stephen Graham Jones has a way of writing that is so realistic that you almost believe, or you could believe, that these werewolves are real life people and they could be living among us. And yet it's just so heart-wrenching, but so like wide open. And it gets into your head. And I don't think Amy and I could have read a better book as a buddy read, because I needed to discuss this book as we were reading it, because it was just so weird and so many things were happening that if I wasn't discussing it with someone, I think I would be missing so many things. And I already feel like even discussing it with Amy, I missed so many things. And it's a book that I think you could read 5 times and still be utterly confused on what's happening. But that's also what makes it good. I don't know. I will be picking it up again in the future, point blank, just to figure out more about what's happening. But I did give it, what, a 4? 3.5? I did end up giving it a 4 out of 5 rating, just because it's something that's still in my head right now. Okay, number 5 is This Town Sleeps by Dennis E. Staples, and this was my intersectionality prompt. It takes place on a reservation in Minnesota where 2 men enter a kind of on and off again relationship. You have Marion, who belongs to the indigenous community of the area, and he is a little bit more open with his sexuality. He's been on and off the reservation many times. And then you have Shannon, who is a white man who works at the local lodge, and he is not open at all with his sexuality. And in fact, he kind of has some history that is negative in relation to his sexuality. However, what really makes the story stand out to me is that as Marion is coming home to this reservation and starts his relationship with Shannon, he ends up seeing a ghost dog on the playground, and he starts following this ghost dog and figuring out there's a little something, not sinister, but there's a little bit more to a story of a previous death in his life. And he's trying to figure out what's happening with that and how to work out this relationship with Shannon, or lack of relationship with Shannon. And that summary really doesn't do this book justice. However, it's kind of all I can give you, otherwise I'd be ruining the book for you. It is truly a story about finding your own identity, finding purpose in your life, and finding lasting consequences for not just yourself, but for future generations, with a little bit of supernatural in there. And it was just such a beautiful book. And I thought I would hate the ending, but after a couple of days really reminiscing on the book, I loved the ending, and I loved just the journey the book took you on. And just how real the author got. Staples had a way of just bringing you on this low-key adventure, but also telling you the real truth of what's happening. It was just a beautiful story, and I really do recommend it if you like any type of romance, unrequited love, and maybe just a supernatural dog. I recommend this book. Now, number 6 is The Watchmen by Louise Erdwich, and I chose this book for the other than the 5 civilized tribes prompt. Erdwich wrote this book to base it off of her grandfather, who fought for the rights of her tribe to keep the land that they're on while he was a night watchman. And reading the endnote, she wrote this book mainly because something similar had happened in the last 4 years to a DC tribe, and they had to fight for their right to be called a Native American tribe and the right to their land. And she remembers her grandfather really saying how difficult it was to learn the laws and to fight for their tribe and to go all the way to Washington, D.C. to go to a hearing in order to fight the case for his tribe. It was an interesting book. I wasn't really enticed by the characters. However, it was a beautiful story, and it is enticing me to read other books by Erdwich. And I heard she is an amazing author in her other books, although I don't think I'll pick up this specific book again. Number 7 is Empire of the Wild by Cherry Demalian. And it is about a woman who's pretty recently, in the last year, lost her husband into the woods. And she has been searching for him for this whole time. And she really intertwines the Métis tribe's myth of a werewolf-like creature. The mystery in this book was really high, and her characterization was amazing. However, I just couldn't get into the story like I should, and I think it has to do with I just wasn't into the story, being so book hungover from Mongrels that reading another werewolf story right after didn't bode well for me. I want to reread this book later on to see if I truly liked it or didn't like it, not being this close to another werewolf book, because I do think I'd like it later. I just need to give it the time it deserves. But for now, I couldn't get into it. Joan seemed like a great character. Her husband, Victor, seemed pretty interesting, and so did Joan's family. And the story itself was so enticing that I couldn't see how I didn't like the book. So that's why I'm really conflicted in this. Now, number 8 is Crooked Hallelujah by Jo Kelly Ford. And it is about a couple of generations of Cherokee women and their lives. That's basically it. It's their struggles, their triumphs, and how they relate to each other. The reason why it's rated so low is just I couldn't really get attached to one single character. You're really trying to learn who these characters are in relation to one another and how they relate or what's happening in their lives. And then I feel like it just jumps to the next character, or it jumps back to a previous character or the next character. And it just seemed very choppy to me, at least. But that doesn't mean someone else might not like it. And then finally, number 9, Heartbeat Braves by Pamela Sanderson is a romance novel. It is the first in the series about Ryan Larson, who works at an urban Native American center where they're trying to find a place where Native Americans living in the city can gather and find community as if they were living on a reservation. Now, Harry Grant's uncle is in charge of where Ryan works and basically gives Henry Ryan's job or promotion. And so it's that haters to lovers trope. And it was fine. It was a cute romance, but I just thought the characters weren't as developed as they could be, and it was very superficial. I really wanted to like it going into it, but it just wasn't a romance that I could get my head around. However, that doesn't make it bad. I know there's people out there that would absolutely love this book, but that's just my 2 cents on it. Now, the very last prompt is a non-bookish media, and I watched season 1 of the Blackstone series. I believe there's 5 seasons, and I was only able to go through season 1. It's not a typical series that I would dive head first into. It's very drama oriented, and I'm not necessarily enticed by drama series. However, this one was very interesting. It focuses on this Blackstone First Nation community, which is going through really tough time where their officials are very corrupt, and this next generation is kind of rising up to try to dethrone them and turn around the reservation. And of course, there's cheating, scandals, stealing, everything you can think of. It's a drama, right? It was good. I would highly recommend it if you like drama. And I think later on, when I have time, I'll definitely look at the subsequent series. But like I said, I absolutely enjoyed my time for IndigAthon, and I'm so glad I read the books that I did, and I got introduced to so many authors that I'm definitely going to keep my eyes on in the future. And I hope you were able to find some interesting books for yourself. And I will see you for part 3 for everything else I read in November. Have a wonderful day. Bye. Napiro? Narnapa. I don't think I'm saying her name right. Even though the summary I gave was utter. It was not good.